Hey, it's Travis. Too many camp directors run just on gut feel. Our free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic is your dashboard for resilience. Take it today at camp.mba/Travis. Again, that's camp.mba/Travis.
A big thanks to our sponsors who make the pudding possible. The American Camp Association of Illinois is made up of nearly 289,000 members, volunteers, campers, families, and professionals who believe in the power of camp. They work to disrupt the effects of poverty by providing fundamental services for children and families and learning opportunities for camp professionals. Learn more about ACA Illinois by visiting acail.org. You know the impact you want to make in a child's life, but figuring out the day-to-day details can be overwhelming. Let Camptivities help you make that impact by streamlining the creation of your camp activity schedules. Schedule a demo at camptivities.com.
Welcome to the pudding.
The sweet proof of research to back up what you already know about camp.
I'm Dr. Mandi Baker, and my pronouns are she, her.
And I am Travis Allison. My pronouns are he and him. Today, we're going to be talking about the benefits, the real benefits of being in nature that people experience because of their camp experiences. Mandi, what we say nature, because again, just to remind everybody, what we're doing is applying research in the show. And so it helps to have some definitions. It helps to do some ground setting. What do you mean by being in nature?
Sure, it's a good question. And lots of people assume that when we talk about nature, we are talking about remote wilderness. And in fact, that actually has turned into a bit of a problem in the conversations around outdoor education, outdoor recreation camps. There's this big assumption that you have to be all alone with the trees or rocks or water for it to be truly nature. So when I'm talking about nature, I'm constantly reminding the students I teach that nature and our ideas about what that is a social construct. It's something that we have put a story to, a narrative to. And if you ask some people, they'll say it has to be wild and remote. Others will make the argument that there can't be any human or built environment within sight or within range. Myself and a few other authors have made the argument that it's any time that you, with your physical body, are in contact with nature. So arguably, the moment you step outside your door and the wind blows your hair, you're in nature. And depending on different cultural groups, there's the argument that having a picnic in a park or in someone's backyard is a nature or outdoor experience. So nature can come in a lot of different forms. In this case, we're going to talk about nature as long as there's a certain percentage or focus. The majority of the focus of the experience is on natural elements. That's going to be our nature today.
Great. Great. So it's certainly part of our promise to parents, being in nature, putting your kids in nature, even if we are a city camp, being outside and being in nature is all part of that. The outsideness of it is it. So what does it do? First of all, I know that we were talking big picture benefit, but what does it do to you?
So, look, there's been some amazing research talking about the benefits of being in and around or engaging with nature. And look, the first and probably most obvious is when we're outside, we're generally more active physically. So we're not usually, a passive participant in outdoor nature experiences. Now, don't get me wrong, a good lounge on the beach is a nice way to spend a day, a little bit of sunshine if you can get it. Or sitting in that picnic chair out in the park, that's perfectly considered a nature experience. But generally, we get a lot more movement, and so as soon as our bodies are moving more, there's benefits to all kinds of things like our heart and lung health. But we also know that being in nature, whether you're moving or not, could potentially have affective benefits and cognitive benefits. So I'll break these two things down. Affect is about emotion. So affect, A-F-F-E-C-T, can be used interchangeably depending on the theorist involved with the idea of emotion, emotional, mental benefit. The other is cognitive. Cognitive is your ability to think, our thought processing center. And there's a ton of research that argues that we can increase our attention span, concentrate better, recall memory much better. In fact, the argument on memory is the best kind of memory you can recall better is word audio memory from having been in nature. Yeah. Right. So your ability to hear words and recall them gets better when you've spent time in nature.
Right.
A weird kind of quirky little thing that sits out there in the research. There's also lots of research, like I said, about the emotional. So I'll put this out there. The cognitive benefit research has been debated. Some of it has great evidence, others less evidence. It doesn't mean that it isn't working. It does mean that there's more research that needs to be done to be confident about certain bits that we're trying to understand better about cognitive benefit. The audio memory thing is a definite yes. We've got the good evidence behind that. Yeah. But there's other things that, we just need to experiment a little bit more with and learn and pay attention to. But the emotional benefits are amazing and well documented and consistent across 20, 30, 40 years of research. So let's talk about what that means.
Yeah.
let's talk about how do we get that benefit? What does it look like? What does it do for us? So there's this thing called the parasympathetic nervous system. Ever heard of this one?
Yes.
Yeah, you're familiar? Okay. Yeah. When I say that to my students, there's a lot of moments. They're nervous about it. So it's the idea that we have a nervous system that manages all these kinds of hormones that respond to stimulus in the environment. Mm-hmm. It tells our brain that there's something going on, and then our brain tells our bodies how to deal with that or what we should do to deal with that. It has a lot to do with what's argued the animal brain. So this is the amygdala and our responses of fight, flight, or freeze. Right. So if we got rid of all of our frontal lobe and all of that executive function, all of that processing center that we often argue is where we get thought and rationality, and we have this bit of our brain that says something happened, I need to respond to that. And that bit of our brain is very much like any animal. It says, do I fight to take care of me? Do I run away? Or do I play dead? Is it time to be a possum? Yeah. What is going to get me through this best? And although we all know we don't live or have to live like animals, as humans, we're being constantly inundated by stimulus, and our body's response is to automatically assume it's stress. It's to go, this is stressful, not necessarily distressing. That's a different, that's a whole new layer, and it's got a negative connotation, but there's this stress coming in. And so our brains go, okay, now I need to sort out if this is something that I need to respond to. So there's a cognitive process involved there. And then if I do need to respond to this, how am I going to respond to this? So when that stimulus comes in, chances are that our heart rate goes up, our breathing rate goes up, cortisol starts firing off in our body, our skin chemistry changes. There's all these things that happen very, very quickly, fairly invisibly to us because we're not really paying attention to it. And then our brain, our frontal cortex kicks in and goes, okay, what do I need to do about this thing? Yeah. What we know is that when people spend time in nature, they are able to do the sorting mechanism of what is worth worrying about and what's not much better. They can calm themselves down from having been inundated with all of this. So that sort of baseline gets a bit calmer to begin with. So you have a little bit more capacity for processing and dealing and responding. Yeah. So things like being in nature, can lower heart rate, can lower breathing rate, can lower cortisol. It can do all of that. And here's the best bit. You don't have to do anything for that benefit other than being in nature.
Just step out. Yeah.
Yeah, step out, hang out with green stuff and brown stuff and blue stuff. As a general rule, those three colors are helpful. The cool thing about nature is, of course, there's all the colors, but we often talk about green and blue space. And when you're in green and blue space, actually that calming effect comes fairly quickly, is effective. The longer you spend out, the longer the effect is. So the more robust the effect is, it sticks with us for longer. We can stay calmer for longer, and we can sort better is the other part. Look, I don't know if have you ever felt tired after a day? Like you get through a day of peopling and you just feel exhausted?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all do. And we live in a time too where we're peopling a heck of a lot more than we ever used to. Totally. Social media connections, being able to just fling out messages and connect with folks. So we are sorting stimulus in a way like no other civilization really has. We are inundated with information. We're inundated with stimuli. And so we're just sort. So it's not a surprise that you get to the end of the day. Maybe you don't get to the end of the day. Maybe you get to 3 PM and you're just like, I'm exhausted.
I feel heavy.
I feel heavy, or I know I'm saturated, is what, we talk about that in research. Yeah. Like I've maxed out what I can take on today. There is no more space. The sponge is full. It makes a lot of sense to me why people experience that. Sadly, in the way that we live right now, people blame themselves a lot for it, or they see it as a very individual problem rather than understanding it's a collective social society problem. I'm tired because we're overpeopling. Even the best extroverts are overpeopling and getting worn out.
Yes.
And it's about how much your brain is being asked to sort, how much decision making it's being asked to sort. It's time to go hang out with your favorite tree. And the good news is you don't have to do anything more than that. There is no need for more active engagement other than to place yourself in a natural environment and just be. And earlier today, we talked about being restless, and too, it doesn't matter if you're moving. It doesn't matter if you're moving or being still in nature. Right. It's still effective.
Give yourself a huge helping hand this summer with Michael Branwine's 5 Fingers of Fantastic Staff Training. Without the need to travel, and from the comfort of your home or office, you can gain control of your staff training prep through his interactive and engaging online seminar. Michael's annual Brandwine on Training, the step-by-step system for planning and presenting your best staff training ever, isn't a boring webinar. Michael uses the same techniques and tools from his in-person trainings, but in a virtual space, bringing folks together from around the world. Join Michael in ACA, Illinois this March 26th and 27th. Learn more about this and other Michael Brandwine seminars with ACA, Illinois at acail.org/Michael Brandwine. And don't delay, early bird rates end February 1st.
I mean, it's interesting to think about personally. So I am an extrovert. And so, but it is amazing how much, the 2023 version of being around people doesn't make me happy. It doesn't give me that thing that being around a lot of people. I was at a camp wedding, so I spent 3 days at camp with camp people, which was just talking, hanging out, and being outside and sitting around campfires. And it is so much different than that same amount of FaceTime in a week. I mean, I also find that if I have 1 Zoom or 2 Zooms a day, that's my entire day. That's all I got. And for an extrovert, it's always struggled to find that. And so I see how that applies. I also see, as you're saying, how a good solution is just get outside.
Get outside. Well, and I think this is the catch, is that we are peopling, so we have more relationships with more people. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of those relationships have to be deep relationships either. And I think extrovert, introvert, we all, I think, get a real benefit from that sense of connection and the validation that comes with being people who are like, yeah, I get you, I understand you. So that can be quite energizing. Yeah. But when we have so many relationships, and a lot of which aren't about connecting, they're fairly surface level-y kind of encounters. Yeah, I think that adds to the whole sorting bucket without necessarily deriving the same level of pleasure or the same level of connection that we value. And keep in mind, when I'm talking about like interactions and relationships, I'm not necessarily talking direct people to people relationships either. Just opening social media and flicking through. Let's say you flick through 10 posts. Okay, 10. That's a joke. Most people get through probably 30 before they've even considered what they're doing. And then there's people who are very avid with social media and they flick through 50 or 100 in a sitting. And they might do that 3 or 4 times a day. You've just had 300 interpersonal interactions, regardless of the fact that it's superficial. Your brain, it doesn't know that. Your brain just goes 300 stimulus that I need to sort and react to. Like your brain doesn't, that part of your brain, that center of your brain doesn't actually have much of a qualitative filter. It just goes 300 stimulus. I got to deal with this. It's our frontal cortex that does more of the processing of the value and the worth, the quality measure. So you're getting worn out in a bunch of different ways. And go outside. Sadly, the other argument is less social media or less posts. And that doesn't mean you don't connect with all the humans that are important to you. It just means putting boundary lines around social media time. Like I'll do it twice a day for a couple of hours and, and that's where I will I'll call it. Not because I don't love these people or that they aren't important, but because I have capacity of X and I can't keep going over top of that. So being able to, this is a good argument for being able to shut down your phone or your whatever mechanisms and being with trees that don't hold a phone in front of your face. It's an argument for why technology and nature are not, but that's a different episode. We'll save that sucker. But if you want that outdoor time to be at its most valuable, it's setting all those sort of interactions aside and just being. Here's some good news, by the way, about the benefits.
Please.
Decreases anxiety, decreases rumination. So for those who don't know what rumination is, that's when you think about a thing, you keep looping on it, can't move past.
Over and over.
And decreases of negative feeling or low mood. So these are kind of the realities we live with, right? Anxious and thinking stuff over analyzing and getting down. So these are the 3 major like winning of getting out in nature.
Right. So we don't have to spend a lot of time here, but one of the things that I come across or that is part of my work in communications is developing an understanding of the power of those 2 levels of the brain, of peeling the onion kind of stuff. And that people make decisions based on emotion, and then the next level of the brain just comes up with a scenario that logically supports that. And so I'm only saying that to support that emotional level is so powerful and so fast. We make a decision, we're like, that's perfectly logical, but we've made it based on an emotional choice. And then we have figured out, we use the logical part of our brain to come up with a factor. So it's just so deeply powerful.
I think people fail to actually recognize, and maybe they do, and maybe I'm wandering around with an assumption in my head, that emotion is deeply tied to the body and the physiological. So, it makes sense if you can imagine back to more basic times where our job was to survive and not be eaten and to eat what we need to keep going, right? Okay, if we think of that kind of... we have a physiological reaction, which is understood in an emotional way. Emotions and physiology, the hormones, they're all super, super tied and they're very embodied. It's a very sort of, basic first sort of step. And that comes to us quickly and is happening. So you can say, I'm scared, and say at the same time, my chest feels tight. So you can put emotion and physiology together very quickly. And it's just like you said, then we process and then we try to make sense. And sometimes that making sense is evidencing or justifying a decision made in the heat of the moment. Sometimes it's trying to unpack where that emotion come from. Is it a reasonable emotion to have? And what we're also saying when we're saying that, sometimes we're saying is, where'd that physiological stimulus come from? And is it a reasonable response to that stimulus? So there are times where our response is like, oh my goodness, I need to fight or run.
Yeah.
And instead we need to take a moment. And that's the thing about timing with these things. It actually, the physiological or the emotional response is immediate, very, very fast. It's huge and can be overpowering. And this is why we talk about just like sit with it, because what happens is your breathing and your heart rates go down, your cortisol or adrenaline levels come down, and then you're able to shift from the fight or flight mode into the cognitive processing. What do these emotions mean? What does it signify for me in terms of how I respond to the stimulus? There are times where I'm talking to folks and coaching them, and I'll say things like, you need to take a moment and say, I am safe. I'm not at threat. No tiger's going to eat me. Mm-hmm. And then just, that to help shift that away from the no tiger. I know it's a ridiculous way of talking in our current, but no tiger's going to eat me, as in my animal brain has told me there's something that concerns me, but I am not actually predator or prey right now. I need to hold for a second. When I talk to students about anxiety about writing assignments and procrastinating, the strategy is nail your feet to the floor. It's sit in your chair in front of the task. Don't open new windows. Don't run away mentally. That's what we're doing when we're social meeting, when we're supposed to be writing that essay. Don't run away mentally, and just wait 30 minutes. And that should be enough time for all of the hormones to come down. And guess what happens when you're calm? You can get the work done. It's not a panic.
Yeah.
And it's the same with social interactions, right? If you can just go, hey, I need to sit with this moment because I can hear that I want to fight or flight, or I'm reacting in a fight or flight kind of way, or I'm freezing. That's the other one. Yeah. I'm shutting down. I can't engage. You want to speed up that process, or perhaps even better, set a baseline that's just that little bit calmer, that little bit more refreshed and ready to do the stimulus sorting, stimulus responding. Hang out with trees each day. It doesn't take much time. The longer you do, the better. But if it becomes a habit, you're banking good green, blue time.
Scheduling affects every camper and every staff member's summer. It's easy to make mistakes, and it takes a ton of time. Bottom line, scheduling is hard, but it doesn't have to be. Let Camptivities help you create a balanced and engaging schedule without the mistakes and without those long days and late nights. Here's what Camptivities has to offer: auto scheduling, camper scheduling, group scheduling, elective scheduling, manual adjustments, over 50 different reports, tons of customizable settings, and so much more. If you're looking for a better way to schedule this summer, they would love to show you the next big thing in camp. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat. Let Camptivities help you get away from your desk and back out to camp.
So we understand that it has these very important effects on us, and lots of beneficial. We understand the sort of emotional, physical stuff, but there's lots of benefits to that. So we're an industry that that really talks about and shows its benefit to families by saying we're outdoors. How can we use the knowledge then to help explain or justify is not quite the right word, but explain better to families how we benefit their kids?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of these beautiful things about camp. And many camps have the privilege of being some of the prettiest green blue space. Like really, it's an absolute privilege. That's not a thing that everybody gets to access very often. And so camp is this great opportunity. I think when we talk to families, especially about sharing what the benefits of camp can be and provide, and why it's so special and important to encourage their kids to engage in some of this. It's about making, I guess to some degree, making it a little bit more visible, the reality that our children and youth are living in, and therefore the benefit of learning how being in nature can be a useful tool for the world they live in and the world they're going into. I don't see the use of technology or social media lessening. I don't see the world of the 24-hour newsreel slowing down. There's an intensity and an anxiety. And even if we took all of the emotional value out of all of that stuff, which we can't, it's a lot of stimulus to process in a day. That's a ton of stuff to sort about what to pay attention to and what not to. And a lot of that stimulus is clamoring for us to pay attention. It's trying to make an argument, social, emotional argument for us to pay attention. And I think, so if we can recognize that we have young people going into this reality, are living in these realities, and the chances are that they can become very, very overwhelmed. And when we become overwhelmed and we're saturated with information, the fatigue and therefore the ability to manage the anxiety inducingness of it becomes harder. And we start to lose the war a little bit. We start to lose our hopefulness. There's some theory about helplessness, learned helplessness. And arguably there is such a thing as learned hopefulness.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
So it's this idea that what we can do without necessarily having to be theoretical or academic about it, what we're doing is we're helping children and young people develop robust hopefulness, develop a calmer baseline, some more capacity for sorting, help them develop habits of being able to not just like regulate and center or ground, but to replenish, to actually use recreation for what it was meant for, which is the recreation. It's getting those batteries charged back up to jump back into the reality that they live, and the one that we don't quite understand yet, but is coming and is coming at us. But what we do know is it's got a lot of stimulus in it. So, and the great thing about it with camp is this is not a lecture. This is not theoretical. We're not reading papers. We're playing and we're being.
Right.
And if we think about how children learn, they learn through being and action before they even have the capacity for language. So just by getting outside in a habit like camp and being introduced to it in a positive way, they are starting to develop these habits before even having to unpack it with language.
Right.
This is a gift. This is such a cool gift that camp offers. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that this all makes me think of, because my obsession is how do we get families to trust camp and send their kids there. Yeah. It really makes me think about how we tell the stories of camp and its benefits. And I want camps to talk about all the things that happen at camp that don't necessarily have to happen on site. We can teach parents to do this better with their kids. We can give them the tools to help their kids relax, help their kids, regulate themselves in different ways. Yeah. And we have, so this is why I said to Mandi, we should really talk about this as a show, that we don't need to hold it. We don't need to guard that place. So come to we've talked about Camp Magic, or we'll talk about Camp Magic on the show. We don't need to guard this magical place. No. We have the tools that we can give to families to make their kids better. Better is probably not the right word, but to just give their kids some tools. And we shouldn't, how we develop trust with families is sharing the tools.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's as simple sometimes as just being able to get out for a walk, and the walk does not have to be long. I know parents are busy. I know they're tired because they are also inundated, but being able to say, okay, we're going out for 15 minutes to walk around the park. There's a reason why urban planning is so focused on making sure there's adequate green space. There's a reason why, politicians and governance, and we are arguing about green belts, and we're saying, no, actually, we need to hold these spaces. Here's an example. I knew that my kids were struggling a little bit over the last week. I knew I could feel like our connection was kind of getting a bit crackly, and I wanted to connect back in. And I was like, okay, dudes, we're going to go get pumpkins. And we're just going to go out the country road. So we're not even walking. We're not even walking in nature at this point. It's a 15, 20-minute drive out a country road. And knowing how busy my kids' brains are and how active and how energetic they are, I was like, we're going to play photo bingo, and your job is to get a picture of every color of nature that you can. I mean, it is autumn. It's my children's first autumn in Canada. So this is the first time they're really doing this.
Yeah.
And they were like, hang on, what are the rules? Because we play a lot of games. And I said, well, it has to be, it has to be natural, and it has to be, you have to have a picture with all red and one with all orange and one with all, like, get me all the colors. That game in a car, right? Like this is making the most of helping my kids be present, be mindful, and be engaged in something that's simple and that's connected to nature. And it's, sometimes it's a hassle to get my daughter to put the books down. She loves reading, and it's no books. We're playing this game. We are going to observe, and the conversations that come out of it, like, I didn't have to prompt it. It was, oh, those colors change when there's a shadow. And did you see how gold the fields are and what grew there once, right? So the conversations, I don't have to prep. I don't have to facilitate. I don't have to think too hard. It's just that simple. And I think if we can recognize, camps do this intrinsically, potentially even take it for granted. So, hey, camp operators, this is an opportunity to start articulating the value of that thing that you do when you just hang out under the trees. There's more than just the social. There's more than just the active. There's all of these wonderful dynamics at play. And handing those tools to parents by saying, being out in nature helps your kid handle stress better, helps your kids have better mood and be more resilient and not get caught in their own stresses in their minds. These are incredible tools. And guess what? You don't usually have to pay a whole lot to be around trees. They're fairly accessible. Grass, rocks, trees, water, they're fairly accessible. And you don't have to expend more energy as a parent, because parents are also already tired. So it's one of those cool things that camps just do, but we can definitely share.
Right. That's great. Is there any other little pieces of this, Mandi, that you wanted to get across today to camp people?
I think from the camp point of view is a reminder that I think a lot of times in camps we assume that it's the active activities that are the most significant in terms of benefit. And in many ways, those really active activities are very memorable. And so those are the ones that often kids will bring back up and they will tell the stories of. And there's definitely a market imperative for selling to camp or to parents about camp is to sell the active activities.
Yes.
Maybe it's because we don't always articulate that the just being stuff is equally important, if not possibly more important, given how anxiety-ridden and highly stimulated the living environment is for most kids, even adults now. And it's to maybe it's time camps can be part of the push and change the narrative that the just being, the recreation, doing something for its own sake is incredibly valuable and also equips kids and youth. You are equipping them to handle the stress and pressures of their now and their future.
Yeah. This is definitely a bigger discussion, but I think one of the interesting things that I wanted to leave folks with after what Mandi's saying is making me think of is the movement within camp within the last 5 or 10 years to put so much more unstructured time into a day. Just sitting or letting kids just sort of do it at their own thing. Just not how I was raised at camp. When I was trained as a counselor, it's like kids are doing something all the time. There's always back pocket games. If you're just sitting, there's a game. If you're just sitting, here's a song. And I think that there are, there's definitely camps like Camp Stomping Ground in our industry that are leading on this. A lot of people are picking up those lessons. And I think that just ties in so well with this, just giving them a chance to sit outside.
Yeah. I mean, some research I was reading recently talked about often kids beginning relationships with the outdoors is like collecting stuff, like picking up on the maple keys.
Pockets full.
Yeah, pockets full. Yeah, pockets full. And that's the beginning of a lifelong relationship that some research has argued leads to better stewardship and better custodian,
Right.
of the land. So letting kids pick up those rocks and having conversations about why a rock is so special. Like half the time I can't tell why my pockets are full of their rocks, my kids' rocks. And we have these chats like, why is that rock so special? Well, it was so smooth, Mom. It's so smooth. You got to put your fingers on it. And, these are the kind of lovely everyday acts of wonder and awe that by themselves are beautiful, but quietly on the side, the research is also saying that's helping ground and calm, that baseline, that being able to deal with stress.
Right. Thank you, Mandi, for putting this into words that make sense to us, that help us absorb all the things that I think a lot of us felt, I suppose, rather than understood. So I appreciate that. Yeah. If people want to follow up, how can they get in touch with you?
Oh, always glad to hear from folks at getlamped@gmail.com, GETLAMPED, like a light, @gmail.com.
Wonderful. And if folks have questions you want me to ask Mandi or topics that you're wondering about, even this, I think this is such a great example. This is a thing that I think a lot of camp people feel, but didn't know, or didn't know what it was. So there are lots of things in the camp world that we have that are the feely things that every conversation with Mandi, I was like, oh, that just justifies exactly why this is this way at camp for me. So I really appreciate that. So send this question to Mandi or to me, Travis, at gocamp.pro. And if you didn't know, now you know.
Now you know.
Go Camp Pro, way beyond the basics. Hey, it's Travis. Camp directors often tell me they're just too tired to take on anything new. That's exactly why my free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic exists. It doesn't add work, it shows you progress. Quick, free, repeatable, you'll know if your systems are paying off without the guesswork. Try it today at camp.mba/Travis. That's camp.mba/Travis.